name is Dolores and I'm Sonny's grandmother. I'm looking forward to doing this interview with him today.
What was life like when you were younger?
Well, I was the youngest of a large family, and what was life like? Well, it was completely different than what it is today. We lived in Renla, and that was like the centre of town. My father was a scrap merchant, and I had 3 other sisters. And the whole thing about life then was school. You know, you started school at a very, very young age. I think I was around 5 or 6. Do you want me to roll?
I don't want you to answer the next question.
Yeah.
So what was life like? There wasn't a lot of money around at that time.
Yeah.
Explain, it's nothing like it is now.
Yeah,
They don't have cars or anything like that, you know.
And then just keep following on.
Yeah. Well, there was not a lot of money around at that time, so we had to entertain ourselves, which was very, very good. So after school, the whole thing about life was meeting your friends, your school friends, the neighbourhood kids, and everything was about the neighbourhood kids. So what we would do is we would make up all our own games. We would have our plays twice a year, okay? And we had a big shed, so we used to create the plays in our shed. The Wicked Witch of the East was my sister, and then the Fairy Godmother, and we had then we used to create schools. So we get all the children in from the neighbourhood, and we would make schools, and Patricia, my eldest sister, was the teacher. So we entertained ourselves a lot, and then we would play skipping, and well, there was no television, there was no internet, there was no telephones. So really and truly, our imaginations, we had to use our imagination to create games. I loved the idea. Every evening after school, whether it was winter, summer, or snow, we played outdoors. We came home from school, and the first thing your mother would say to you, out and play. So we could all go out and play. And we'd stay out till about 9 o'clock at night. And I don't think I ever did homework, to be honest with you, because I didn't know how to do homework. But, so our community of friends in the area, and everyone and all the children in the area went to the same school. So, and each age group, like I was the youngest, so my friends would be around my age, and then my sister Caroline, she was the next to me. Now, she would never let me play with her or anything because I was very tall for my age. So she used to think, you're not my younger sister, you don't look like my younger sister because you're too tall. So she used to make me walk behind her about 10 steps all the time, and which was so funny in those days looking back. Now, we didn't meet a lot of people, only our community, because we didn't really go. There was no cars. Where do we go? We used to go to Bray every Sunday. So every Sunday in the summertime, we go to Bray, and my father would go into the local pub with my mother, and he'd meet all his friends there, and we go along the prom playing, and there was a rink there for skating. So we used to go into the rink and skate there, and then when my father had, we had a few drinks, and we'd all go back and say, Dad, can I have some money? And then we go off and buy the fish and chips. Where did we? So that was Bray was the furthest place that I ever sort of went. We never really went into town, into O'Connell Street or Grafton Street or anything like that.
Question 3. Where did you live through your life?
Well, I lived in quite a few places. My father died when I was about 14 years of age. So it changed the whole concept of our family. And it changed the whole dynamic of our family. He sort of kept the family together, and he was a man that he was a very strong-minded man. Like when we were younger, we got a car because he had he had a business, so we had sort of a life that we could have things in life. You know what I mean? Cars and a radio and a television. So eventually we got these things by the time I came along. So after he died, the family sort of fell apart a bit, and I went to live in England at around 16, 17 years of age with a friend, and then I came back. That's where I met my husband, and I came back, and I had my son at quite a young age, and then I came back to Ireland for a while, and then I moved for about 10 years, and I opened up a business, and then I spent, when my children were around 10, I went to England, and I spent about 7 or 8, maybe 10 years in England. I went to Singapore for a while, and then I went back to England, and then I went to Ireland, came back to Ireland, and I'm in Ireland now.
Question 4. What was school like, and what age were you when you left?
Okay, what was school like? And I'm sure everyone at my age can tell you the same story. It was a nightmare. I started school, I think you were 4 or 5 when I started school. And I remember my very first day of school, my mother left me up to school. And my other sisters had all been in school before me. So I remember taking the walk with her up to the school. I went to St. Louis in Rathmines, to the nuns. That's a big one. The nuns, yes. And I remember when I went into class, there was 60 in a class of those days. And I went to school, and all the children were crying around me because they did not want to be there. And all the mothers were standing in the doorway looking at their children, trying to comfort them. And I remember my mother's little face looking at me. And I thought, there's no point in crying because I'm going to be here for years, so I might as well just get on with it. And that was sort of the attitude I had. So I didn't know in those days that I was dyslexic. So I didn't, from day one, I hadn't got a clue what anything was going on. Nothing. Remember, 16 in the class, I was dyslexic, and there wasn't an academic bone in my body, so I lived in a fantasy world. And the nuns were very, very harsh. So there was a mixed class for the first 3 years, and the nuns were very, very harsh. No matter what you did, we used to have to come in the morning and do all the floors, put socks on our feet and polish the floors. Then the 60 would go in, and they never stopped slapping us for everything. And as I said, we weren't alone in that. I think my school might have been better than some schools. Then throughout school, I learned nothing in school. Absolutely nothing. I used to sit in the class and fantasize about what I was going to do when I left school. And I used to look at the copybooks, and I used to go into the copybooks if the children were playing in a field. I was in that field. So I was always getting chastised in school for not concentrating or whatever. And then I was put into the class upstairs, because that's the dunce's class, and you had the dunce's hat on, and then I was put up there, and then had to do all the sewing for the Christmas plays and everything. But I couldn't even do that because my hands in that time used to perspire an awful lot, so I couldn't hold the needle. And then when I couldn't hold the needle, the nun used to stick the needle in my arm, thinking I just was doing it on purpose. So school was absolutely a nightmare. But I survived, and then I left school at 14. I left St. Louis, and my father put us down to a convent in Grafton Street. Okay, it was the I can't remember the name of it now, but we went to a school just off Grafton Street there, and because a lot of my friends were going there. They weren't going to go to St. Louis High, and I survived there about a year. That's all. And then I left school when I was 14.
Question 5. What big things happened in your lifetime?
Well, because I had no schooling and I was completely non-academic, I lived in this world. So it brought out other achievements in me, which was great, because I thought differently. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to go and work in a bank, or I wasn't going to be able to be a teacher or a doctor or do maths in school, and I didn't even think like that. So my biggest achievements was, well, first I had my son at a very young age, and that was a huge achievement for me. Then I had my daughter when I was 21, and that was another big achievement for me. But I opened up a business when my son was very, very young, and my first business, I was always thinking about, you know, what can I do to survive? And it came very easy to me because I opened up my first shop and it was in the Dandelion Market, and I used to get, I think I was around 18 at the time, and I got a loan from the bank at 18, and I used to make these bell bottoms were out then, and they were called looms, and I used to do them on purple and greens and everything, and I don't know where the ideas came from or how I achieved them, but I used to sell them in the Dandelion Market, and then that was a huge achievement, so that kept me. And then I went into the indoor market, and I opened up eventually over the next 3 or 4 years about 4 or 5 stalls in there of different things. So this was very easy for me because I wasn't academic, and I obviously with all those fantasies I had as a child, this is all came very, very easy to me because as I say, if you can't do it one way academically, there's always other ways to do things, and this business came to me very easily, and ideas came to me very easily. And when I had an idea, I had to do it. No matter what happened, I had to do it because I just felt it was the way to go. That was a huge achievement. The biggest things. And then going to live in England was another big achievement. I left my businesses behind and I went to live in England for quite a while. Now that taught me an awful lot as well because I did different things over there, like, I was always selling something. So I'd buy something like, say, in a market, and then I'd resell it in another market. They were all achievements. Then my biggest things. Then I was growing up. Life was growing up. The children were growing up, and I stopped work for a while, and then I divorced, and I came back to live in Ireland. And I didn't know what to do. So I remember I went into the dance studio in England, and I was going to start doing exercise classes, and I saw this girl from America doing a class called the California Workout. So I thought, wow, I could do this. So that's what I was always like. If I saw something I liked, I went, I could do that. So I went to her every day and I trained before I came back to Ireland. And I learned every movement that she made. And then I taught myself how to do this. I was brokenhearted when I came home. I had 2 children, and then my brother we had this big place in the back of one of his house, and he gave it to me as a workout studio, and I opened up quite a great business there. It was called the Renal Workout Studio, and that was a huge achievement. That went on for 3 years, and I remember that I went on television with that, and I used to get write-ups, and there used to be about 20, 30, 40 people in my classes at the time. But I never thought they were achievements, because no matter what I did, I felt you had to work really hard to make it. So I would do like 5 classes a day of aerobics and working out, which nearly killed me in the end because it was open 6 days a week, and I worked very, very hard. And so everything I did to extreme because I wanted it to be the best. And it was the best. So that was another huge achievement. Then I went back to England again for another few years, and I got married over there again after about 5 or 6 years, and that was another achievement. And from there on, I went to live in Singapore, and then I was out of business for quite a while, and I really missed me supporting myself and my ideas. So my ideas sort of went blank for a while, and then I came back. And I remember when I was over in Asia, I was looking for things to do that I could do when I came back to live in Europe. Because I was always searching and looking for things. But nothing happened. And then I opened up a business with my son called Hairspray. And that was a huge achievement. We ended up with 5 or 6 stores, and I'm still working at that today, and I'm in my 70s. So that's going back 20 years ago. I think that was probably a great achievement. then I had my grandson Sonny, which was a big achievement with him growing up, loving every moment of him, and he sort of grew up with Hairspray. So I had many great achievements in my life, considering I had no schooling, and it's not always thinking academic is what works for you.
Joe, can I just say something?
Yeah.
One of your biggest achievements is when you were diagnosed with cancer. And
Oh
you
yeah,
got over
I
it.
got that right, yeah. Then about 2 years ago, or sorry, actually it was 3 years ago, I worked always, and I was never really ill, and I was very healthy. And I started to feel not great, like very weak, not weak, but down in myself. And I'm not a person that's ever really down on myself. And over the period of about a year, I kept thinking, is this it? I have no new ideas coming to me. I don't seem to be achieving anything. But what I didn't know was that I had cancer. And I had a slow growing growth for 2 years before they discovered it. Before I actually had to beg the doctors to go and examine me and do something, I know there's something wrong with me. And I had many, many, many tests, and everything was fine until they finally discovered it. And then I had a very large growth of cancer, and I've got over that now, and that was 2.5 years ago, and it was a big achievement getting through that, I can tell you. That was probably one of the worst achievements, but the best achievement. And back at work and kicking it again.
Question 6. What were your least favourite things about growing up for you?
Well, the least favourite thing was school. You must remember that, because I learned absolutely nothing. Nothing. I mean, I couldn't read when I left school. I couldn't write. I could barely write. I couldn't do maths. Nothing. So it was so difficult being in school every day, and the teacher's pet was the one that was always, the brightest in the class, or, the neatest. I was tall and awkward, and I was like, so I was always put to the back of the class because I looked like I was in the way all the time. And I also, I was quite tuned in to life, even though I lived in that fantasy world. But it was very, very difficult school, I have to really think. I was very, very difficult, and that was took over my whole childhood, the schooling. And that was the most difficult thing of my childhood, was school. And also, growing up in those days wasn't easy, because...
Also, though, I would just say, I also, as well, and I don't like to interrupt ever, you married the wrong man as well, and it was a very challenging marriage.
Yeah. When I met my children's father, that was very, very difficult. I was very, very young, because in those days you went to the local dance, and I went. There was no drinking or drugs or anything in those days. So what you do is you go, and it was called like the Moulin Rouge, the Five Club. But what I didn't know was I made some great friends, when I was younger. When I got into my teens, I met 2 lovely friends. I've still friends to this day. But I didn't know that I met my husband very, very young in life. That was when I was going to these dances at 14 years of age, I met him, and that was quite a normal age to meet somebody, because a lot of people got married at 18 in those days, and it was a very challenging relationship, because what I didn't know was that he wasn't a well man, and he was sort of a psychopath, and he was a very tough person to live with. And growing up in Ireland in those days, as there was no television, no internet, no nothing, we were very naive. So he was very, very handsome. So I thought handsome was good, but he never gave up on me. I'll tell you why, because how strange it was. In those days when we went to the dance, we put our bags just under the stairs. And I remember my friend and I got those little photographs taken, in the machine. And when I went to get my bag one evening, it was a Thursday night, my bag was missing. And things were never really stolen, you know, because we didn't have much money in it. I probably had my bus fare home. So years later, when this man then, he sort of stalked me. He followed me. He followed me everywhere, and everywhere I went, he was. And I thought that was love. And but years later, when I went to visit his mum lived in Birmingham. When I went to visit his mum in Birmingham, one of those little photographs that were taken on me that night was up in his mum's kitchen. And she said that my son brought that home to me, she said. And he said to me, that's the girl I'm going to marry. So he had his eyes set on me from a very young age. And I didn't realise that he was a stalker and a psychopath. But the good news out of that was a very, very, very difficult time in my life. And it took away a lot of my joy and my creativity and my happiness, because I was a very happy kid. And after I left him, me and my children had to rebuild our lives completely again, which was very, very difficult, because when you're living with somebody that's insane and that is controlling and manipulating, and what do they call them today? They're called
coercive control.
It's called narcissism, okay? And but really it is just complete control and cruelty. And the police really did nothing in those days. But I got out of that marriage, and we survived that. I survived that, and my children survived it. But that was a huge challenge, I have to say, being in that marriage.
Question 7. What are your passions?
Well, my number one passion are cats. I love cats. I love animals, by the way. Absolutely love all animals, but cats are one of my favourite. So, you know, I usually have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cats. When I lived in Singapore, I brought 9 cats home with me. They were all street cats, and I brought them home, and you know, and that started my cat fanatical life. I did, okay, right. So I have 4 at the moment. Not those cats from Singapore, because that was over 20 years ago. But I've always got them. They always keep coming to me and coming to me. I also have a great passion for my business. I'm now, you know, the business has grown, my son and myself, and now I have my own wig shop. We manufacture all our own wigs, and we deal with a lot of clients that are chemotherapy clients, hair loss, all to do with hair conditions. That's one side of the business, and the other side of the business is, you know, like extensions and funky hair and ponytails and all of that. But my passion is the side of the business where I'm dealing with my clients. I have a huge passion for my clients. Clients come to me from all the different hospitals that are going to chemotherapy, that have lost all their hair, and I've worked on getting my own collection of wigs together, which is called the Mayfair collection. So, you know, that is just, you know, these are the happy endings of my life. I have a passion for my grandchildren. I have a passion for my grandson, Sonny. I have a passion for my son. I have a passion for life. I love life. I actually genuinely love life, you know, and you know, and I love going into work. And I just want to know that you don't have to be academic to achieve it in life. You know, it's great to see the other side of the academics, because my sisters were very academic and my brothers were very academic, and I was the one that was non-academic in the family, and I'm the one that had all the businesses. So so I had looking back on my life, you know, I had loads of ups and loads of downs, but I seem to always be able to get it back together again. And I'm so happy that I'm left with this wonderful business and this wonderful family I have. And you know, I just say I enjoy life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonny. It's been a pleasure.